You are frontline workers during this crisis, and your dedication to keeping Portland moving is essential. I know that the future will be challenging for transit agencies. There may be additional stigma placed on buses, light rail, streetcar, and transportation methods that involve congregating people. But I'm confident that TriMet and the City of Portland will persist and that we will find new, innovative ways to encourage public transit use. The transit relief funding through the Federal CARES Act will help our system survive, but we'll need to be creative and resourceful moving forward. I want you to know that I'm still committed to the Rose Lane project and the Youth Pass funding through Metro's regional transportation measure, and I'll continue to fight for both efforts as we navigate an uncertain future. While there are many competing priorities right now, I believe that Portland can and will continue to make real progress on improving transit in our region. So thank you once again, TriMet. You're leading by example with social distancing on buses, fogging disinfectant protocols, and continued commitment to rider experience and essential services. I look forward to continuing and strengthening our partnership once this crisis is over, or at least begins abating. And in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out to my office. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for your leadership in helping continue to push transit as a form of transportation that everybody can enjoy in Portland, and your work on speeding the system up in the Roseway bus lane. It's just been fantastic. And we do look forward to working with you on a number of projects in the next few years. So we really appreciate your leadership and willingness to step up in this trying time to help us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all of you. And now I need to go log in for council session.
All right. Thanks again for joining us. All right.
Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye now. All right. So I'm looking down the list here. Some names I don't know, but is there others, Jeff or Kimberly, that we need to be looking at to call on for public forum? Well, we'll hope that it's just people didn't sign up, or not that they were unable to sign up to get into the public forum.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bruce. This is Kimberly. I was on mute, so I see that Michael Harrison is actually on the line, and I know he would like to speak.
All right, is Michael Harrison there?
I am here.
Would you, so please, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, and sorry for any confusion on my end. I'm Michael Harrison. I'm the Director of Local Relations for Oregon Health and Science University. And I just wanted to take a moment and thank the board, thank sort of the administrative staff at TriMet, and perhaps most importantly, thank the bus drivers who continue to serve OHSU facilities as we continue to care for our COVID and non-COVID positive patients. I don't know how many people know this, but OHSU, especially Markham Hill and South Waterfront, are kind of transit dependent by design. We only have one parking spot for every 3 employees. So in many ways, we've created intentionally created a culture of transit or bike or, sort of pedestrian dependent employees. And even though we've sent a lot of our staff home, and are working from home like myself, we have a lot of folks, as you can imagine, doctors, nurses, custodians, et cetera, who have to report to the Hill every day. And hundreds of them are still using transit, even though we've opened our parking lots to everyone. A lot of them are still transit dependent. So just thanks so much for your service, because without your help, we wouldn't be able to continue to run our hospital. And maybe on a more human note, a lot of our riders have expressed that they've received a lot of encouraging words from the bus drivers as they get driven sort of back and forth from work, which really means a lot to people who are on our staff. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you. How's the tram going? I understand you had to do a little restrictions there, and I haven't heard anything about how that is actually working out for you guys.
Yeah, it's it's a great partnership with the city. The city owns the tram. We manage the tram jointly with them. And early on, we in order to keep the distancing on the tram, because normally we're shoulder to shoulder in the tram during peak hours, the city agreed to let us limit the number of people on the tram for each ride. So because we've sent so many people home, anybody who can work from home is working from home now. So because we've done that, and because the city's allowed us to kind of limit the number of people per ride, the tram is still providing a very critical service for internal circulation for patients and employees, and students using the tram. So it's still working well.
Perfect.
A little longer than they usually are.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and good luck on that one. Appreciate your time and your comments this morning. They're appreciated.
Thanks.
All right. I see a note. I don't see anybody else that actually is indicated as somebody who wants to testify. Again, back to Kimberly or Jeff. Am I missing somebody else?
Hi, Bruce. I believe that Steve Satterley, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is on the line to speak as well.
Okay. Steve?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Well, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Right. Well, thanks for providing the time for me to participate. I'm here today as a longtime transit supporter. Thank TriMet for being so nimble in the face of this crisis we're in. I know that the ridership's down and the big money squeeze, but you've been able to strategically provide service for folks, as we heard before, particularly with regard to the essential workers, grocery workers, and especially those heroes working in the hospitals to provide vital care for our sick folks and all of that. And also kudos for the continued service you're making to the poverty areas of poverty and communities of color. Services in these areas is vital for folks to access essential service such as food and health care. While continued service is crucial, safety is paramount. I want to thank TriMet for all the actions they've taken to keep us safe with regard to limiting the amount of folks on buses and closed off seats and things like that, as well as the regimen for cleaning every day. It really helps us to do our part in social distancing and keeping us all safe. I want to end just with a little note, a personal note kind of thing. I want to hail the creativity of TriMet with regard to utilizing the on-street customer service staff to team with Meals on Wheels people to deliver the needed food to folks in need. As an alumnus of the on-street program, I'm proud to see TriMet involved in the community this way. And we're all going through tough times, and I just want to make sure you guys keep doing what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate your comments. And yeah, I want to thank Doug and whoever else was involved in helping out Meals on Wheels. That was a great opportunity. So again, we'll look forward to other partnerships we can do that. And I would say stay tuned as we look at our budget and the resources over the next 6 months or year as this all unfolds, because we're trying to provide the best service we can and provide as much service as we can with the resources we have available.
Great. Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I understand we have one more, and who is that? Who wants to testify?
Yes, we have a user on the line listed as Al M. So please go ahead.
All right, Al, it's floor is yours.
Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Al is connected to audio, so he will not be able to speak.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Okay, is there anybody else out there that we're missing that has signed up? We want to make sure we allow them to speak. Well, hearing and seeing that I'm going to close the public forum. We're a bit early, and I guess I'm looking at Shelley Devine, our general counsel. Is it okay for us to proceed to our regular business meeting?
Yes, we noticed the start of the meeting for 9 a.m. So yes, go ahead.
All right, good. And why don't we do a roll call, Kimberly, for the board members, so we make who's all here.
Okay, sorry. So obviously President Warner, you're here. How about Director Stovall?
Here.
Director Simmons?
Here.
Director Bauman?
Here.
Director Gonzalez? Okay, it does not look like we have Director Gonzalez yet. I know we do not have Director Edwards yet. And
Yes, you do.
oh, you do now.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just on audio. I'm not on video.
Okay, great. And Director Way? Here.
All right, good. Well, hopefully Ozzy will be able to join us in a little bit. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to call our regular meeting of the TriMet Board of Directors for April 22nd, 2020 to order. And with that, we're going to move right into the board reports and ask the Director Stovall to give us an update on the recent Finance and Audit Committee meeting.
Good morning, board members, staff, and team. This morning, we actually held our regular Finance and Audit Committee board meeting, Finance and Audit Committee meeting, and we covered two things. It's the start of the audit. So as everybody knows, I see this as the most wonderful time of the year, which is kind of audit season. So we got to kick off the audit this morning. We touched on all the regular things in regards to how the audit generally goes. One thing that we also highlighted this year that's going to be different is kind of the COVID-19 situation that, of course, we're all facing, and some of the implications of how that's going to impact potential audit. We don't see it having a great impact on the audit, but they will be going through some additional considerations as they're looking at kind of the impacts of some of those things and how it impacts the financials of organizations to ensure that they're doing their job and informing both the public and the boards of directors on some of the impacts of how that goes. Next up, we also covered kind of a high-level highlight of the potential financial impacts from the budget perspective, both what we're experiencing now and potentially what we're going to experience in the future. That's a whole dynamic conversation that's going on right now, so not much of that is solidified and concrete because we're going to be seeing things come up over the next month or 2 months or even 90 to 180 days as we look to respond to what's going on in the market. So we're looking at various scenarios of how this is going to impact the organization and agency financially. Again, both this year, next year, and the ensuing years in regards to some of the impacts there. We also highlighted some of the funds that are coming from kind of the federal government in response to this. Being roughly probably in about the 180 to 185 million over a 2-year time frame, and how we can apply that towards some of the revenues that are going to be leaving and keep more of a stable approach to the overall operations of the agency, thus taking care of our community. So again, some of this is going to get baked into the current budget process that goes forward to the TSCC. But I want to make sure that I put the board on notice and our stakeholders and internal and external folks that this is a dynamic situation, that we don't have a real clarity that we normally have because of the current situation. We don't know when the full economy is going to open back up and how that's going to impact us, and when the revenues are going to return. And that's potentially going to be in phases. So I just say all that just to kind of let everyone know that this is a dynamic situation. We continue to run the different models and scenarios, and until we have a little bit more clarity, it's going to be complex and difficult to potentially roll out, some guidance that is clear, and potentially that will lead the Finance and Audit Committee to having most likely some interim committee meetings over the next month or so to ensure that we're staying responsive to the team in regards to hearing and then giving feedback, and thus bringing additional concerns to the board. So those were the two items that we actually covered at the Finance and Audit Committee this morning. Any questions, thoughts, or comments from the board?
Director Simmons, you were there this morning. Do you have any other comments or thoughts?
Travis did a great job.
Okay, perfect. And I guess I would only add that I think that as a result of the changing landscape in terms of financing, I think the committee also knows that we're going to be meeting on a more regular basis, and probably the board as a whole will be meeting on a more regular basis to talk about the finances as it unfolds and as we get closer to the actual adoption of our budget date. I think there's going to be a lot of activity going on. Is that fair, Mr. General Manager?
Yeah, that is correct. We will see more over the next probably 3 weeks in particular.
Okay, good. Thank you. What I just found out is we did miss one person during the public forum. So unless there's anything else on the Finance and Audit Committee report, I'm going to go back to our public forum and ask that Pam Treese, who's Washington County Commissioner and also head of the West Side Economic Alliance, be allowed to speak if she's ready. Pam, are you there? I'm not hearing Pam Treese.
Bruce, this is Kimberly. I got a note that she was unable to get in.
Oh, okay. So we will continue to move forward then. If she gets back in, let us know, all right? All right, so let's move on. Is Director Gonzalez here yet? Don't hear him, so I think we will pass on the Transit Equity Advisory Committee progress report, unless there's a member of the staff that wants to provide that report for Director Gonzalez this morning. Director Stovall, do you have a comment?
I do not.
Okay. And Doug, get your hands up. Not okay. So we're going to get this WebEx down yet. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it to the general manager for his general manager report. Mr. Kelsey.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Board President and members of the board and the public this morning. This morning, I'm just going to cover 2 items, and the third one is more of an update for you. The first one is we really do want to come back, and we'll likely continue to want to talk about COVID-19 and the agency's response, the actions we're taking. And you've heard by some of the folks testifying today, do want to talk about our frontline staff a little bit as well. I'm also going to give a quick update on our ridership. I think it'll be hopefully informative for you. So overall, in terms of COVID-19, we definitely, things are highly volatile. We're learning every single day. We thought it might have tapered off a little bit, but it has tapered down a bit. But there are still a time of a lot of dynamics going on inside the organization and outside the organization with our partners, and as this thing unfolds. We are developing policies literally almost on a daily basis, which sometimes take days and weeks and months in some cases. We don't have that kind of time, but we're trying to respond internally as rapidly as we possibly can, and putting procedures in place to help our frontline staff be safe and secure, still while providing the essential services that you heard earlier this morning, we should never take for granted. So I'll give you a couple of examples of this. We've just installed some signs inside our buses and trains encouraging physical distances. We're working very closely with the health authorities, and I really want to call out the head of the Multnomah County Health Organization, representing all 3 counties, Dr. Vines. She joined me on a recent town hall meeting to ask questions from any of our staff, the several thousands that we have here. And we've really want to applaud her for helping us making sure we're doing the right things that are appropriate for the times that we're in. So we continue very much to hitch our wagon to Dr. Vines and the OHA organization to guide us through things where, frankly, we are not experts on a lot of topics. So anyhow, we're looking at also wearing face coverings and really encouraging our customers to wear them. We're not making it mandatory right now. A few agencies in the East have. We have not, but that's where we're following the direction of the health authorities, and we will continue to do so. We have, because of some of our technology challenges, we exit through the front door. We have, you may be aware, we have put stopped collecting cash to create some social distancing, further social distancing between our bus operators and our customers. We're, instead of carrying approximately 50 people on a bus, we're carrying approximately 10 to 15, and the operator has a discretion. We have signs on different parts of the bus to help encourage where people should be sitting to help inform people what social distancing is. Now, that doesn't get followed all the time, but I think it's a helpful guide to everybody. Again, we continue to, we'll likely see this unfold over time. And I think for the most part, our drivers have been just excellent in managing this in a real professional way. You even heard a couple examples this morning of really encouraging the community that we are such a large part of, not just carrying people, but caring about people. And I think you continue to see that from our frontline, amazing frontline staff. Recently, we've like everybody else in this country, we have been challenged to get PPE. We have been scrambling since the start, even including making our own, if we need to, hand sanitizer. I think we've got enough supplies of that in now that we're in a pretty good state, including tapping into local distilleries who've converted over to help us. Think examples of that nature. So we go down the PPE list. We've had some shortages sometimes of gloves. Clearly, face masks have been a challenge. And I really want to thank some of our internal staff who've been literally sewing in their off hours to help us. We've got relationships with the community around face masks, and we've recently got an order of 10,000 masks in. So we think although the supply chain is highly fragile and it's been a problem for us, I think the trajectory is very much improving to making sure all of our frontline staff in particular have access to face masks. So as a combination of ways to be, as others have referred to us, to be innovative, we're really trying to do so. And to that combined with, I've authorized $2.8 million to complete full installation of bus barriers for all of our drivers. Got approximately 50% of our buses converted over now. But what we thought was to be the intentional purpose to help for safety around assaults and around our bus operators, it's truly helping to be almost a supplemental barrier or mask, if you will, for our bus operators as well. So it's serving another real benefit. And I believe we are the only transit agency in the state of Oregon actually has bus barriers and is continuing to go to a full bus barrier mode. Not just for what we see the challenges of the moment, but also if the COVID-19 reemerges, which some people are saying this winter again, whether it be SARS or be other things, this will be long lasting as we're looking to not only solve the problems today, but try and get longer term mitigations in that will help us for whatever comes at us in the future. So and as of Monday, and I do want to just give an acknowledgement to Director Bauman for her interaction and support with an idea of about, where we've got paratransit services that have been cut back substantially to around the 85% level of reduced service. Some of those staff, we've kept some extra on. And now we are actually effective just this Monday. We are now, in addition to the Meals on Wheels initiative you heard about and may have seen, we're just activating, helping to use those drivers that we're paying for right now while we can afford to, offering grocery and essential pickup item for some of our most challenged community of our paratransit. So in addition to Meals on Wheels, you'll see this has now been activated to, they can't even get out, some of our customers on the Lyft side of our business, to go pick up their groceries. So we're trying to help utilize what we do best to connect again with the community we serve to the degree that we possibly can. For some, this is actually a life-saving resource, and I've heard a few personal stories on this, and it's I'll tell you, it's heart moving, and we're trying to do everything we possibly can to help those very important members of our community. As I've indicated, the Lyft ridership is down about 85%, and I think this is going to help us. We're not sure we'll be able to get to everybody on this home delivery service, but we're sure going to do our best to get as many people as we possibly can out there. Again, these are a couple examples where we try to continue to innovate, to leverage the talents, the capabilities, the resources we've got based on our financial circumstances. So. And I do want to thank the folks that are doing this service because they are really good at this. Not only the customer service people on Meals on Wheels, but also our folks on the Lyft side that are the service delivered by our partner First Transit. As part of this, I also want to comment that, and I think this came up at the last board meeting, I'd indicated that the Division Transit project is proceeding, but it was on hold because of there's some COVID challenges on the construction with the construction company. That is now back up and running again. So Division Transit is back with all the workers going. So we want to do our part to keep the economy going as much as we can, but in a safe COVID way. So that's an encouraging update since the last board meeting we had. And also the same thing is applying to the Gideon overpass that the board had approved some time ago. So they are back up and the construction project is underway there. Part of the COVID plan is that also authorized the hiring of 30 additional service workers to supplement and sustain the elevated cleaning and disinfecting procedures that we put in place. So we're transitioning to getting those workers out there at in key spots and key times as well. So we really need their help. With our nightly cleaning, we've also used it brought in a test group of what we call foggers that actually can remove the bacteria and disinfect our buses. So we've gone from 8 to 18. I think it's 18 now, and it's uses to disinfect using hydrogen peroxide as a solution. So it's showing very encouraging results for us, and I think our staff have actually, even some of the maintenance and union members have just said probably one of the best things this agency's done in many years. So as a helpful tool for everybody out there. So we're continuing to innovate, we're continuing to pilot and test, and some will work better than other things. Another example is we've just got some ultraviolet light wands in that we're testing how we can actually disinfect in addition to the fogger units that we've got as well. So I frankly picked this one up out of China. They were doing that, and so there's a solution that's a USA solution, which we're trying to manufacture. I think it's in Minneapolis. We just got the first ones in. I think it was just yesterday. So we'll see how that goes. So we're continuing to learn and grow while we do this. And if we can make new applications, even for bus operators at the end of the transit center lines, or maybe they can wand down in the future. But these are things we're still working through. Part of the philosophy while we go through this tumultuous time globally, nationally, and locally, one of the philosophies for me is I'm trying to preserve as many jobs as possible during this downturn. Knowing we've reduced service, it is one of the key philosophies that I'm trying to apply against all the things we do, in addition to equity, in addition to safety, in addition to the things that I think we all see as important for our service levels, but it's also for those who we can provide employment to. You've seen a couple examples like Meals on Wheels. You've seen another example I just mentioned today, like our Lyft home delivery services. So, but one of the principles for me is helping with employment to the degree that we financially can do that. The Southwest Corridor project team is hard at work. The project has now reached the 30% design level. Now, a lot of this work is happening behind the scenes. And many of our employees now are working from home where their circumstances allow. We've got to keep the long term going while we're trying to manage the short term. So it's a very delicate balance that we're embarking on. But the stars of the show clearly are not only our internal employees, and I really want to give a call out to our training department. They are doing a significant work to try and keep our skills updated, to help our frontline operators, our training staff, our maintenance, our mechanics, etc. So I really do want to call out the training staff in addition to IT that we've spoken about before. But we all know the stars of the show, though, are our frontline service providers. I know as the general manager, your general manager here, this is an anxious time. It's an emotional time. It's a scary time. And I don't think anyone's exempt for this. And we are truly, as others have said, in uncharted waters here. But to our operators and to our maintenance staff, our mechanics, our security staff, not just our employees, but our contractors as well. Human interaction is human interaction, no matter how it is, who your employer is, whether it be at First Transit of our paratransit side, G4S. There are our field supervisors. There are many people in TriMet Nation who provide a lot of service for people, and I want to acknowledge all they go through every day while they take on this invisible ghost of that shows no discrimination around who it attacks. So they're doing heroic work in this emotional time. So I really want to acknowledge them and the role that each and every one of us plays. These people are doing an amazing job, as you've heard some examples today. So I think we're going to continue to evolve. We absolutely have to work together. We're continuing to be fused with our other government agencies at the county level, at the city's level, as you even heard from Commissioner Udaley today, and at the state level. So we are learning while we go. We sure don't get it all right. I fully acknowledge that, but I think the spirit of what we're trying to achieve here is only to be thanked by the people at our front lines behind the scenes. So with that, I'm just going to pause here before I move into the ridership update and see if there's any comments or questions members of the board may have of me at this time.
I apologize. I don't have the video, so I can't do the hand up with the WebEx. But Mr. Chairman, I did have a question.
Please proceed.
On the bus barriers, 50% you said were installed. Is there a date when we think that they'll be completed?
Yeah, that's a great question, Director Edwards. We are working closely with a supplier. I've been told the end of July. I'll be honest, there's a number of other agencies that are now coming to do what we're doing. And so I've been told in July, so I'll give you that date. I'm frankly, the sooner we can get this done, I'd like to see if we can get them airshipped in. And I think it's not a labor installation issue. It's actually the physical equipment supply issue. We have been working with our supplier, Gillig, for example, to say, can we buy your inventory? Can we queue jump others, etc. So I would sure like to see this sooner, but it's a bit like getting PPE. It's frankly risky right now. So that's the best information I've got right now that I could share with you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, great question.
Director Way. Director Way, I see your hand is raised. There you go.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Doug, for the report. My question is around the Meals on Wheels, trying to find the right words, in that program. I think it's just such a wonderful idea. Thank you, Director Bauman, for also working with our team to deliver meals for some of our most vulnerable in the community. I was just wondering, I think it would be helpful to, and perhaps we're already doing this, but to collect some data around, where are the areas that we're going to, and also with our Lyft services to just sort of track some data in terms of this particular crisis. And it'd be interesting to see where the areas that are in greatest need, and just to track some of the numbers for that. I think that'll help inform the work that we're trying to do to reach different communities from various counties. So, and if that's already happening, that's great. But if not, anecdotally, it sounds great. But to have some more data and information that we can go off of to make future decisions on other things would be important.
Great comment. Yes, and yes, we are tracking. We do it literally from the dispatch out, so we know date, time, location, and also the types of customers who, in fact, are the most needy to actually have the service. So geographically, all the way across the piece. So we are tracking it, but I think that's a great point.
Great, and I know that some households will, particularly for folks who English is not a first language, I think that would be important to track as well, if we're not already.
Yeah, good comment. You know what? Let me follow up on that one. I think that's a really helpful comment. I don't know that answer, but we'll find that out, and I'll get back to you on that.
All right. Good. I see Director Gonzalez is with us, and then Director Bauman also would like to ask a question. So, Director Gonzalez, your turn.
Thank you. And pardon the delay. I was on the call a little earlier, but I wasn't able to be heard. So I heard the TAC report just pass me by. I would like to ask now about fair inspectors. I know that they're part of the front line. They're interfacing with folks. Has any new protocols or any new measures been put into place for how they go about their business?
Yeah, great question. So yes, there has. Firstly, social distancing is fundamental. Since we have, I'll call bagged the fare boxes, it's more informing and keeping an awareness. When in doubt, if someone doesn't have the cash, frankly, we let them on the system. So it's a very passive type of enforcement. It's frankly more of awareness route, Director Gonzalez, for the time being.
Have follow up.
Encouraging our community and our customers to convert over to the hop card where they have that capability. So yes.
Thank you. And I've heard no formal policies around this, but I get the indication then that no citations have been issued since the coronavirus pandemic emergency measures were instituted. Is that fair? Is that a fair assessment?
Let me check on that. I would say if it's not zero, it's very low. But we can follow up with you on the specifics. I think that would be for bus only, but max citations, there are still some on max citations going out, but let me get you the data. I know it's less.
Appreciate it.
Maybe I just might comment also on the, before I forget, to Director Edwards' comment on the bus barriers, just to let the board know that we are prioritizing, we are prioritizing when we launch our fleet every day to maximize every bus that has a bus barrier on it. So knowing that we've dropped our service down by 20%, that number of the net buses in service has actually gone up because of our deployment strategy, and it's a higher percentage now of fleet in service. So I just thought I'd mention that so we're still trying to keep that at our forefront. So.
Good. Director Bauman.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, and thank you, Doug, for mentioning that that we have Lyft drivers making grocery deliveries now to Lyft customers. Very important. We heard. I will tell the other members of the board that I saw a series of emails among CAT members who are people who experience disabilities and seniors who said that they were having trouble getting grocery delivery, and so this is really going to help alleviate the difficulties for those folks. My question, Doug, is about the impact that we're seeing in ridership now that you're not collecting cash fares. There was a report in the media about some of the impact on who's riding, and what can you just talk generally about what you're seeing there?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So if I break down the ridership side, first we'll start with Lyft. Lyft is down, as I've indicated, about 85%. And so the revenues are basically commensurate with that. In the case of the bus system and MAX system, we're down about 70%. And with that, now we have a lot of our customers who are on yearly passes, for example, versus short-term type of ticketing and hop card usage. So, clearly our revenues have been impacted. I'm not sure it's dollar for dollar. And there's a bit of a lag effect on some of this as well, but it's not because of the yearly passes. Some of those revenue streams continue to come in for us. So, and we're continuing to update that, but there's no doubt we're down significantly, like on revenues as well as ridership, like most agencies are. So cash is about 15 to 20%, just so the board is aware. I think it's about 15 to 20% of our total fare recovery portion. So it'd be HOP and then the cash piece. So just so you're understanding in terms of the magnitude of where the revenue streams come from within the fare box piece. I think this will also have an impact us even on the recovery side, frankly, as we all work from home more. We all do it differently. So I think the recovery is going to force even future revenue streams and our ridership patterns to, I think, clearly change on the recovery side as well.
All right, further questions or comments for Doug on this before he gets into the rest of his report? I'm seeing if you folks want to lower your hands, it'll help me understand if I've gotten to you before too. So with that, and Director Gonzalez, after the general manager's done, we'll go back to your TAC report if that's okay. All right, good. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. I think I've covered some of this next one, which has actually got to the ridership report. But for the month, typically, which the board asked me to talk about, is the ridership was steady at the beginning of the month in March. That just seems so long ago. And we were actually tracking quite well up through mid-March before this pandemic really grabbed hold of us. And because of since the governor's stay-at-home order and kicked in, the system-wide ridership for the month was down 32.5%. So particularly, you can see the front of the month doing well. The back end of the month, you can start to see it really drop to the example I just used of a 70% ridership drop, which were just example for last week. So, and I've indicated already, we've already reduced service accordingly. And I think this is an important piece on ridership is there's a set of principles that I outlined that I've asked our team to implement, which we have now, which led to a 20% reduction in bus service. But we focused on equity, those who may have least economic means to use the system. If we're cutting back, where do we cut back? Protect that, protect making sure that all lines of our bus and of course train services remained intact, but we altered the frequencies down. We also kept, as we heard from OHSU this morning, we also kept as one of the principles when we put these service lines in place, the critical care side. We think we're going to continue to monitor this as we think testing starts to be uniquely centralized at, say, large institutions like OHSU, and it gets decentralized out to some of the other healthcare areas around the region. So we'll have to continue to monitor this over time where the best and right routes are. But in addition to the reductions in service, we've also kept in the back what we call trippers, where if we've got pass ups, when we made some of the initial changes a couple of weeks ago now, we had about 5 routes where we were in fact with social distancing of 10 to 15 riders experiencing pass ups. We subsequently have made adjustments behind the scenes with these supplemental extra buses filling the gaps to really minimize these pass ups to balance this with social distancing. So generally, I think we're pretty comfortable where we are, but we're literally monitoring and adapting to this each and every day. So that would conclude the ridership report. The last item I just wanted to comment to the board on is you'll notice if you go back to the March board meeting in your mind, we had one of the ordinances was around service expansion, our service planning and adjustments plan. The first reading had occurred. Typically, it would come back as the second reading today. I've asked, because of the financial changes and the volatility we're going through now, I have pulled that ordinance off today's agenda for the board and will incorporate any service planning expansion work into the upcoming budget discussions, because to roll out a service plan program when we're actually cutting service back, I think the ordinance, which was intended in the best normal plan cycle we had, is probably not as relevant, knowing the financial circumstances and the world we're facing right now. So I just want to let the board know that I pulled that ordinance off from a second reading. It could come back at some future time, but I think it was important that it be included now as part of this recasting of our budget and our financial world that we're living in. So with that, that would conclude my report, Mr. Board President. If there's any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Are there other questions or comments by the board? Nobody has a hand raised, so I'm going to turn back to Director Gonzalez and ask if he has a report for the Transit Equity Advisory Committee for the last month.
Thank you very much, President Warner. I have a short report. There was a meeting in April. It was the first fully digital meeting, and there were some good participation. Over 30 people participated online. It went pretty well. There was some updates on COVID responses, clearly. A lot of social distancing and different cleaning measures that were all communicated to the committee. And the TAC member agency were sharing resources and updates on what their agencies were doing as well. So it was a good conversation around that. TriMet staff walked TAC through the social distancing guidelines and the plans for buses, discussing the ramifications on reducing passenger loads and TriMet's plan to add additional tripper buses on certain routes. So that information was disseminated to the TAC member organizations. Staff provided an overview on the allowing remote enrollment for low-income fare, so that people can continue to access the enrollment process for that system, and it's going to remain open during the crisis. We fully anticipate those numbers to go up, and region-wide, we're north of 30,000 now. The staff updated TAC on its efforts to partner with Getting There Together, Opal, Safe Routes to School, on the Youth Pass efforts. That is part of the current planning for the regional funding measure. There's a lot of conversation about putting a number on that price tag. And so there was some discussion about the methodology for estimating the program's costs. And they were able to take into consideration the current youth revenue around $7 million. So any new program additions would have to start from that sort of number. So there was some communication about that. And then finally, the last update was on efforts to look at the TriMet draft TOD guidelines. There's been some rounds of public engagement in getting information back into the document based on all of the feedback coming from the community. And so expect I'm not sure the schedule yet, but I'm anticipating sometime this fall, we're going to be seeing that measure, the language of that document brought back to the board. There's been some great additions based on the input of the community. The process by which communities engage in really articulating what project goals become is where there's been a lot of discussion. So I'm really excited to see that becoming much clearer in the document. That concludes my report. Here to answer questions.
Thank you, Director Gonzalez. Are there questions or comments by the board? I see General Manager Kelsey has a comment or addition.
Yes, thank you, Director Gonzalez, for that report. Just to comment on the timing for the TOD guidelines, I'm anticipating bringing the guidelines back to the board at the next board meeting in May.
Oh, fantastic. That is good news. Thank you.
And thank you for your help and leadership on this, because that's taken a lot of work by you as well. So thank you.
All right. All right. Are we ready to move on? All right. I'm hearing nothing. So let's move on then to the consent agenda. And as it says on there, the items appearing on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and may be approved by the board in one blanket motion. We usually have a number of items on the consent agenda, but today we only have one, and it's approval of the board meeting minutes for March 25th, 2020. And I will point out that in your latest information, you have revised minutes that incorporate comments from Director Bauman and myself. Director Bauman was about the accountability committee, and mine was about the ordinance that the general manager mentioned in his report to make sure we had the right dates in there. So there have been changes, and I guess is the board feeling comfortable? If they are, could I ask that a motion be made to approve the minutes of March 25th, 2020 as amended?
So moved. Travis.
I have a motion by Travis. Is there a second?
Second, Linda.
All right, Linda, thank you very much. Is there any discussion, further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve the board meeting minutes for March 25th, 2020, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved unanimously. All right. Well, let's go on to our resolutions, and we have a limited number of resolutions today. The first resolution is Resolution 20-04-20, which is amending a contract for the Southwest Corridor Transit Design Services. Mr. General Manager, would you like to kick this off for us?
Sure. Yes, thank you, Mr. Board President, members of the board. The requested amendment is for $2 million for the transit design services through the project development phase in 2021. This contract phase is a SWTP. It's a team which includes 12 partners, including 5 DBEs, 1 MBE, 1 ESB, and 5 non-certified firms. Overall, the DBE participation currently stands at 18%. But the recent invoices, in fact, have shown the participation levels actually approximately around 25%. So that's very encouraging. The budget for this contract is included in our FY 20 and 21 budgets, and anticipate this will be included in any revised budget as well for 21. What you'll see coming to the board here for the June approval. So your approvals will help prevent delays in this activity. And particularly to the FDA's approval of the final environmental impact statement, and it is recommended before you. I think we have on the call for any technical question. I think Steve Witter's available, and perhaps Leah Robbins. So,
all right. So I'll ask if there's questions or comments by the board.
Yes.
Okay, Director.
This is, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. This is Keith.
Okay. Director Edwards, is that you?
Yes, it is.
Why don't you proceed? I don't have your picture, so go ahead. Let's start with you.
Okay. I just had a question on the diversity issue when they talked about it should get as high as 25%. Are we going to get? Will we get periodic reports on the progress about achieving that?
We can make that available to you for sure. Steve, is there any comment you want to make on that?
Well, I would, President Warner, Director Edwards, we actually get updates on that each and every month. It does vary, as you imagine. Some contracts are more active during other months. And so part of our invoice approval process is to actually record the DBE percentages in real time.
Would it be helpful?
A report would be available to us.
Correct.
We can make that available. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, let me move on to Director Bauman.
Thank you. Yes, I just would like a little clarification. So this modification is for the purposes of completing a phase 1 ESA reports. Can you talk a little bit further about what is a phase 1 ESA report?
Happy to. President Warner, Director Bauman, ESA is an acronym that actually occurs a couple of times. This acronym is for Environmental Site Assessment. And essentially the FTA had made a late game day decision to actually require us to do environmental assessments on the properties that have been identified as impacted properties, either having an acquisition or a temporary construction easement. Typically, we would do that work after the FEIS, but FTA is asking us to do that ahead of the FEIS. The reason for that we would delay the timing is we want to make sure those reports are fresh and contemporaneous with the time that we purchased the property.
Did that answer your question, Director Bauman?
It did. Thank you.
Director Gonzalez, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? I can't tell if
I
I
can hear you.
Thank you. I had a follow-up on the comment Director Edwards mentioned actually regarding a little bit more info on the participation of the 25% of this contract. I noticed the resolution names the prime contractors in the joint venture, and I think it's really good information for us to have those names in there. So knowing David Evans, AECOM, Parametrics are part of that JV is fantastic. I'm equally curious about the diversity element of the team. I think that it would be very useful information from my perspective if we could include some of the names of the firms that make up that 25% that we arrive to. Knowing that that's a dynamic figure, it's nice when we have updates such as this, when there is an active project getting extended, that we see the names of the firms participating. I think that getting familiarity with those entities is just as important as the primes.
Yes, we can do that. Sure.
If I
Sure,
could,
appreciate that.
President Warner, Director Gonzalez, we would be happy to, just to give a little context, and I understand that the names of the firms are germane, but there are 47 total firms on the project, and 32 of those are DBEs. So we'd be happy to make that list available, and just wanted to give sort of that fact and figure in the meantime.
Thank you very much. I anticipate those lists to be long, and even if it's in some version of upon request, seeing those lists of names I think is valuable to us. There's going to be occasions where we might begin to see name familiarity across our contracts, and that's where we start to, I think, really build those relationships on who our emerging suppliers are in the community.
Yeah. Great point. We'll make sure that's done.
And I guess I would just add, this is Bruce. You know, this is a continual item that the board expresses interest in, and I think the couple meetings ago we talked about it kind of having a routine report in terms of our diversity, because I think we just want to impress on everybody how important it is to the board, and so having a every 6 months or yearly or whatever the frequency is, just kind of a report or how we're doing on the various projects in a way that lets folks know we actually are paying attention to this and want to see what's going on would be helpful. So I guess I would just look at some way to routinize this in a way that allows us to see how everything's going on especially on some of our major projects, both the design and construction that you see here.
And
great comment.
Thank you, President. I simply want to underscore the value of the name familiarity as we see that relationship being built on a consistent basis, even though it's through a prime contract. There's a lot of benefit to those companies and to us as board members to know who those entities are as we potentially interact with them in other places.
Perfect. Are there further questions of staff or the general manager? Well, seeing none or hearing none, is there then somebody willing to make a motion to approve resolution 20-04-20?
So moved. Linda.
So
Second, Keith.
second Keith. Okay, so it's Linda and Keith. Is that okay? Got that? All right. Is there any further discussion on this question or this resolution? Hearing none, then all those in favor of the motion to approve resolution 20-04-20, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the second resolution, which is resolution 20-04-21, which is authorizing a modification to a contract with CVE Technologies Group, Inc. for IT network hardware, Software and Engineering Services. Mr. General Manager, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Board President. So yes, CVE, they were initially brought in to help us here at TriMet address IT network issues and the redesign of the network to be more reliable and redundant. For some of the board members, we only have to go back a couple of years where in fact we had the whole control room shut down for 2 days. So as an example, the resiliency side is a very important piece on the IT for us. The original 2-year project will conclude at the end of the fiscal year, but requires an ongoing contractor to continue the refinement of this network. We need to purchase hardware and software updates and also buy new equipment for the agency projects and the related services. CVE themselves, they have nearly 1,200 employees. In their case, about 21% are minorities and 5% are women. The amendment increased the total amount of the contract by $10.85 million, and this would be anticipated over a 3-year period. These funds are actually part of the IT division's capital and our operating budgets, and your approval is recommended. And I think if is Matt Fouts and Tim McHugh available, if you can unmute for technical questions, if there are any.
All right.
Yeah, I'm here.
Questions? Did you have anything you wanted to add before I ask for the board questions or comments? No. And the board, how's the board? Did the board have some comments or questions on this agenda item?
Yeah, I have a question.
All right.
Just trying to parse out, I understand that there's some, there's a lot of IT support, there's some tech equipment and whatnot, but how much of this, trying to understand how much of this was actually services, and looks like, wasn't sure if it's staffing services or if we're contracting a separate engineering service not attached to the installation of all this tech. Does my question make sense? It's a little, okay. I wasn't sure who to ask.
Okay. It's a vast majority of the contract is related to equipment and software. A small percentage, like $200,000 in each year, is related to actual services, and that's really design services and evaluation and install.
Thank you, thank you. That's what I wasn't sure, is if the consulting services were directly connected to the design and install of the equipment and all the line items above. Okay.
Good question.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions by the board?
Yeah. Follow up, the vendor, with the 11, close to 1,200 employees, are those, do you know if that's a predominantly Oregon workforce, West Coast workforce, or just how big of a camp are we, tent are we sitting in right there?
Matt, do you know the answer to that one? I think it's multi-state.
It is multi-state, but mostly on the West Coast.
U.S.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Seeing nobody else with a hand raised or talking. So then is the board ready to offer a motion to approve resolution 20-04-21?
So moved. Ozzy.
Is there a second?
Second.
That was my second. Okay, good. Any further comments or questions for staff or the general manager? Seeing or hearing none, all those then in favor of the motion to approve resolution 20-04-21, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, the last resolution is resolution 20-04-22, which is authorizing the transfer of appropriated funds within the current FY 2019, FY 2020 budget. Mr. General Manager.
Yes, thank you very much. So this $1.5 million transfer that you've referred to is needed to satisfy an IGA, or we call it internal government agreement, with Metro. involving regional transportation projects. In fact, as was referred to earlier, the Max Red Line project. So we are still looking to proceed on with that. The $300,000 transfers also to ensure the costs for the professional services related to TriMet's pension plans and post-employment benefits do not exceed the budget. The transfers such as these are not uncommon and almost administrative in nature, and they've historically made to ensure our expenditures match our spending requirements. So this is kind of a once to twice a year kind of true up and become necessary as the budget. They're based on estimates, not actual revenue. So this is basically a true up administrative function, and your approval's recommended. And I think Dee and or Nancy will be available if there's any technical accounting questions for you.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Are there comments, questions for the board, for General Manager, or for Ms. Brookshire? It's a pretty simple transfer, but this is going to be the first of probably many as we start dealing with the COVID impacts over the next this current fiscal year and next fiscal year. Right. So with that, then, is there a motion to approve Resolution 20-04-22?
So moved, Travis.
Second, Lori.
Second, Lori. Okay, Travis and Lori. Any further comments or questions for staff on this one? All right, hearing none, then all those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 20-04-22, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. And looking at ordinances, we would have had an ordinance if COVID had not gotten in the way. So we'll look forward to getting back to normal service expansion sometime in the future, Mr. General Manager. So I see nothing else on our agenda, business agenda for this morning. Is there anything else that needs to come before the board this morning, either from the General Manager or the board?
Yeah, I had a question for just of general point of order, and it was just about the public element of our forums here. Do these get posted online?
Yes. So due to the last board meeting in March was posted online after the board meeting. This will be the same, but we've added in, as you can probably tell, for our first time, the public delegation aspect to this. We want to make sure we're accessible to the public. So yes, this will get posted I think it's either late today or tomorrow once staff can get to it. So yes.
So Director Gonzalez, your question's a good one. We actually had a public forum this morning. I don't think you were on for that.
That's when I was struggling to get on.
I'm not sure it worked as effective as we want. I think we had 3 or 4 people who signed up ahead of time and participated, but I was actually surprised that was all that participated. So I think we need to make sure we got the word out and understand how to utilize this, but we definitely want to make sure we have that opportunity for people to participate and let us know what's going on out there. So we'll hopefully do better the next time, or maybe everybody was fine and they didn't want to talk to us today.
There may be, consider an opportunity to give people a forum that they could deliver messages to in advance of the board meetings, maybe between, because I imagine there might be some pent up comments just because we didn't have one last month and maybe they didn't know this month. I wouldn't want us to walk into a 4-hour public forum in 2 months. Once people get the word, I would suggest if there were opportunities to bring some commentary forward, we might be able to have a sort of a brief that synthesizes comments received maybe in an interim period. I'm just throwing that out there as a suggestion, simply because it could create a lot of logjam in folks signing up and wanting to have time in a future meeting.
Good comment.
I think if I recall, Kimberly Ango indicated there were no written submissions this time. I think at the last board meeting, as the board is aware, I think we had about 20 or so written submissions from the last board meeting. So, but I think to President Warner's comments, I think I'm going to ask our staff to go back saying, are there other ways to get the word out, and also technologically, if there's steps we can take to help make it less of a barrier for folks to contribute.
It's interesting how this pandemic is creating many new ways. TIAC was an opportunity. I'm not sure how much of this we bring back beyond the pandemic, but it's certainly starting to show how much can be accomplished, in a remote fashion. I'll leave it there.
I see a few board members with their hands up, so why don't we start with Director Bauman?
I just wanted to say thank you. And, I know we're all feeling grateful to all of the staff at TriMet, and especially the folks who are out in the public. Thank you for all the hard work and sacrifice. And it's so important, the service that you're providing to folks who are transit dependent. And so we are just couldn't be more grateful to all the efforts that are being made. Thank you.
Great. And Director Way, I see your hands up also.
Yes, thank you. I think to piggyback off of Director Gonzalez's point about audience or community participation, especially as we're switching online, I think it will be helpful if we can maybe perhaps explore the possibility of having our IT folks maybe do a little pre-orientation or a pre-training prior to the board meeting starting. Just as a way, for folks to test out their system, especially in the community. I know some folks who wanted to call in, but maybe perhaps due to audio, they weren't able to talk to us. So, and with things like this, it's always finicky. It's never 100% perfect, but just a suggestion for however long this continues would be great. And I also want to thank our IT department as well as and other staff for really stepping up and making sure that we're all we can all access this.
I think that's Director Way. I think that's a great suggestion to offer sort of some pre board training for the community to have access if they want. So we'll let us undertake that. I think that's a great idea.
And did I see Kimberly? Did you raise your hand? You wanted to say something?
Oh, yes, thank you. Actually, I think Doug just covered it. I was going to say the same thing, that I think that there are a couple of things that we can do to make sure that it's more clear and easy accessible. And I have noticed that there have been quite a few people who have dropped off, so it does appear that a lot of people did dial in to listen. And I think there might be a way that we can make it more clear between the instructions for just listening as opposed to actually participating in the meeting. So we'll put our heads together and come up with some good solutions for next time.
Thank you.
And again, I want to second what people are saying is thanks for doing what you're doing. I think we made a valiant effort here, but I think we'll get there. I think it was a good meeting. I would just point out, if you're looking on the screen, you can see that our next meeting of the board is scheduled where we will have the TSCC a meeting talking about our budget. And did I remember that Mr. General Manager, they wanted some additional time?
Hello, I think we just got interrupted there. But
so did you, on the TSCC meetings, or anything we need to know about that? My question.
Thank you, President Warner. There is one change from last year at their request to this year. Historically, they have been 1 hour. And this one we will start moving to, they've requested for a 90-minute discussion with us. So please we'll plan accordingly if we could.
Okay. All right. And my assumption is our meeting will be, again, a virtual meeting like this. And so we'll look forward to figuring out how we get both groups together to do this work.
Yes, there'll be another new twist on how we do it, but we will figure that out. So as well. So I think it's best to assume, based on the governor's stay-at-home order, that we should plan for the next board meeting to be similar to this.
All right, good. Well, unless there's anything else to come before the board, I'm going to adjourn the business meeting for April 22nd, 2020, and thank you all for participating. I think it worked better. We're getting there, guys, in terms of how this would work. We understand the WebEx and Zoom and all the other meetings. So again, have a great day, and please be well out there and stay safe.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.